a source for inspiration and fascination for over a century. It frequently appears in movies and books, either as the main focus of the story or as a way to add spice to it. It has become as much of a part of the American history as cowboys and Indians or Western expansion. In stories, mafiosi are as often heroes, or at the very least, anti-heroes, as they are villains. They are frequently romanticized, and their associated code of honor makes it easy to view them in a positive light. Hey fact friends, how is everybody doing today? I hope you're well and feeling rested, ready for another Whisper Facts episode, which today is going to cover the topic of the Mafia. This was a viewer requested video, so if you have any topics you'd like to see covered on the channel, be sure to post them down below in the comment section and I will see what I can do. Alright, so without further ado, it's time to lay back, relax, and let yourself drift away as I whisper facts about the Mafia. A mafia is a type of criminal organization whose central activity is the arbitration of disputes between criminals and the organization and enforcement of illicit agreements through the use of violence. Mafias often engage in secondary activities such as gambling, loan sharking, drug trafficking, prostitution, and fraud. The term mafia was originally applied only to the Sicilian mafia and originates in Sicily, Italy, but it has since expanded to encompass other organizations of similar methods and purpose. For example, the Russian Mafia or the Japanese Mafia. The term is applied informally by the press and public. The criminal organizations themselves have their own terms. For example, the Sicilian Mafia and the related Italian-American Mafia refer to their organizations as Cosa Nostra. The Japanese Mafia calls itself Ninkayo Tentai, but is more commonly known as Yakuza by the public. And Russian Mafia groups often call themselves Bratva. When used alone and without any qualifier, Mafia or the Mafia typically refers to either the Sicilian Mafia or the Italian-American Mafia, and sometimes Italian organized crime in general. I must admit, I know very little about the Mafia, so I'm going to learn a lot from this video. I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I don't know a lot about it. So it's pretty much going to be all new information to me, but that is something I love about making these videos. Not only do you guys get to learn and hopefully relax to my content, but I also get to learn. So there are lots of benefits to these videos. The American Mafia, commonly referred to in North America as as the Italian American Mafia. The Mafia, or the mob, is a highly organized Italian American criminal society and organized crime group in the United States, emerged in the poverty-stricken Italian immigrant neighborhoods or ghettos in New York's East Harlem, the Lower East Side, and Brooklyn, also emerging in other areas of the East Coast of the United States, and several other major metropolitan areas such as New Orleans and Chicago during the late 19th century and early 20th century, following waves of Italian immigration, especially from Sicily and other regions of southern Italy. Okay, so here we learn that the Mafia in the US began in the late 19th century, primarily in the New York area, but a sprinkling of other major cities as well. So that's a brief history of when and where the Mafia began in America, which is probably the one most of us are familiar with, thanks to such movies as The Godfather. And whilst we're on the topic of The Godfather, I have to admit, I tried to watch it, but I did end up turning it off after it was probably about an hour, which I may get some heat for doing, but honestly, I could see how well made it was. It just wasn't my kind of movie, is all I would say. The part I recall most clearly is when the guy wakes up in the morning and there's a horse's head in his bed. That was pretty graphic, but yeah, if you're a fan of the Mafia, you no doubt love the Godfather movies. I have to be honest and say it wasn't for me, but I do have an interesting fact for you about the movie that you may or may not know. But The Godfather does not contain the words Mafia or La Cosa Nostra because of a deal struck between the producer and the real Mafia. I would love to have seen how that meeting went and how they came to the agreement. The American Mafia is divided into different groups or families. Many large cities have only one Italian American Mafia family, but some larger cities, like New York City, have more. New York City has 5 Italian Mafia families. They are as follows, and I will do my best to pronounce these names correctly, but I can't promise that I will. So first of all, we have the Bonanno family, Bonanno. Secondly, we have the Colombo family, so that's a bit easier to pronounce, the Colombo family. Third, we have the Gambino family, the Gambino family. And the final two are a lot more difficult to pronounce, but I will have a go. And the fourth family is known as the Genovese family. The Genovese family. And that is spelled Genovese. And the final family on the list is the Lucchese family, and that is spelled Lucchese, the Lucchese family. And what is shocking to me is that the Mafia still exists. I mean, I had no idea that they were still in operation today. But again, it's not an area I pay any real attention to. However, that fact does surprise me. The Mafia is currently most active in the northeastern of the United States, with the heaviest activity in New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Buffalo, and New England. In areas such as Boston, Providence, and Hartford. It also remains heavily active in Chicago and has a significant and powerful presence in other Midwestern metropolitan areas such as Kansas City, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and St. Louis. Or perhaps that's pronounced St. Louis, but I know it's in Missouri. Outside of these areas, the Mafia is also very active in Florida, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Mafia families have previously existed to a greater extent and continue to exist to a lesser extent in northeastern Pennsylvania, Dallas, Denver, New Orleans, Rochester, San Francisco, San Jose, Seattle, and Tampa. While some of the regional crime families in these areas may no longer exist to the same extent as before, descendants have continued to engage in criminal operations, while consolidation has occurred in other areas, with rackets being controlled by more powerful crime families from nearby cities. So, in the US at least, the Mafia were and are quite widespread. I mean, there are a lot of different cities and states covered in that list, probably a lot more widespread than I ever would have imagined. Just like in a company where people have a boss and workers, the Italian-American Mafia has a hierarchy. Everyone has a job to do. Some people are bosses and some are workers. However, you can always work your way up the ladder of power and respect. Below is the hierarchy of an American Mafia family. So first of all, at the very top we have the boss of the family. He controls the Mafia family. Every worker and lower ranking boss works for him. It is the boss who decides if someone should be killed or if someone should be initiated. The boss gets money from all of his workers and therefore is usually the richest person in the family. And just below the boss we have the underboss. The underboss is the person who actually runs the family. He is boss over all the other members except the actual boss. He will often become the head of the family if something happens to the boss. And next we have the consigliere. The consigliere. Consigliere is an Italian term meaning someone who gives advice. The consigliere in a Mafia family is is the right-hand man to the boss. It is his job to help make important decisions. The consigliere is as important as the underboss, but is not in charge of anyone in the family. A family will usually have only one consigliere. The consigliere acts as a middleman in personal vendettas. His role is to make impartial decisions for the family's benefit. And below the consigliere we have the capo regime. The next position of the family is the capo regime, or captain, often shortened to capo. Families will have differing numbers of capos. They are in charge of a group of workers known as soldiers. The underboss of the family is in charge of the capos. The job of the captains is to collect money from the workers to give to the boss, underboss, and the consigliere, as well as keeping money for himself. A family can have anywhere from 2 to 20 capos. And finally, we have the soldiers. The workers of a family are called soldiers, or in Italian, soldati. Their job is to earn money to give to their capo regime. They will do any job asked of them by their captain, or the boss, or underboss. A family can have anywhere from 10 to 1,000 soldiers. This is my favorite part of the video so far, learning about the different roles within the Mafia. And I officially run. I can literally picture scenarios when someone doesn't do their job properly, probably a soldier, and then they face backlash over it. And it's not like if you make a mistake in a regular job, I'm sure they're literally scared for their life. But yeah, I find it really fascinating to learn exactly what the hierarchy of the Mafia families is like. And now we move on to some general quick-fire Mafia facts. Italy built an entire courthouse to prosecute the Mafia. They charged 475 members in a trial that lasted from 1986 until 1992. To date, it is one of the biggest trials in history. The depictions of the Mafia in The Sopranos were so accurate that real members thought that they were being spied on. These conversations were overheard when the FBI were indeed spying on them. That's quite amusing. The Sopranos is a show I know of, but I've never seen. But I think the actor who played Tony, was it? I think he died in real life, which is a shame, but it's amazing and also amusing that the real Mafia became paranoid because the show was that well made. I think that's a brilliant fact. The Mafia helped establish the gay bar scene in New York. They purchased the Stonewall Inn in 1966 estimated 44 billion euros in 2007, which was 2.9% of Italy's entire GDP, with drug trafficking making up nearly 2/3 of their income. It is estimated that the group imports 80% of Europe's entire cocaine supply. At his peak, Mafia boss Al Capone was making an annual income of $1.3 billion in today's money. Wow, that is a lot of money. And Al Capone is probably the most well-known member of the Mafia, even to people like me who know very little about it. I have at least heard of Al Capone, and I'd actually really like to learn more about him, so I imagine one day there could well be a facts video made about him, so keep an eye out for that one if you're interested. As mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, Dennis Kucinich had a hit placed on him by the Mafia in 1978 for refusing to sell public utility company Municipal Light. The plan fell apart when Kucinich became ill and missed the Columbus Day parade where the shooting was supposed to take place. Wow, it sounds like he got very lucky there. Indeed, or he could well have paid the ultimate price and been taken out by the Mafia. In 1948, an Italian partisan named Placido Risotto was murdered by a Mafia boss. His body was hidden. In the 1960s, the boss was acquitted twice of Risotto's murder due to lack of evidence. Finally, in 2009, Risotto's remains were found on a cliff. In 2012, a DNA test confirmed they were his. In the 1990s, a Russian mafia and Italian mafia organization participated in a literal money laundering scheme, washing and bleaching the ink out of US $1 bills and reprinting them as $100 bills for use in the post-Soviet bloc countries, where the bills might avoid detection as counterfeits. That sounds like a very time-consuming process. I can't imagine it was a lot of fun to do, but as we learned during the summary of the hierarchy, it was most likely the soldiers who took on this particular task. In 1985, New York Governor Mario Cuomo denied the existence of the Mafia when asked by reporters, and called them a lot of baloney. This incident and Cuomo's rumored mob ties became a common explanation for him not running for president in 1992. Tattoos in Japan were banned from 1868 until 1948. Traditional Japanese tattoos were associated with the Yakuza, as they were used to mark the skin boss. To this day, they retain a stigma of criminality, and many businesses still ban customers with tattoos. Undercover FBI agent Joseph Pistone led to over 200 indictments and over 100 convictions of Mafia members. The man who introduced Pistone to the Mafia was murdered for having allowed an FBI agent to infiltrate the family. He was shot dead and his hands were cut off. Mafia leader John Gotti and the Campino crime family used an area in New York City called The Hole as a mass grave for Mafia targets. Wow, I wonder, is that, as it sounds, literally just a huge hole that the bodies were dumped in? It makes me think about a scene in the movie Casino, if you've ever seen that, which I have seen in part, but I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen the whole movie. But there are two people who are beaten with bats in that movie and eventually buried alive in a sort of sandy grave, and that fact just reminded me of that scene in the movie. And finally, Italian police officers posed as pizza delivery boys in order to arrest Mafia boss Roberto Mangiello of Naples' notorious Camorra Mafia, listed as one of Italy's 100 most dangerous criminals, as he watched football in his apartment. He offered no resistance to his arrest. Alright guys, that is just about it for today's Whisper Facts episode on the Mafia. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I personally found it fascinating, especially learning about the hierarchy within Mafia families, as well as some of the quick-fire facts, which I thought were pretty eye-opening. But if you did enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button and drop a comment down below, as it helps support the channel. And if you like this sort of content, consider subscribing as well for plenty more fact videos like this one in the near future. But a huge thank you for joining me, and until next time, rest easy, sleep well, and I hope to see you again very soon for another video, and goodbye.